Okay, so here we are, day 2-ish of the Fiat resuscitation project, and it is Friday, July 2nd. Ironically, the 4th of July parade is going to be held tomorrow on July 3rd because reasons. I don't know, weird. But, so I am down to the wire of getting this up and running. The drive shaft replacement was successful, got done with that, and I was very excited last night, and then I realized that that isn't the only thing I needed to do to this car. Previously on Battlestar Galactica.
Look, I have one job on this lousy ship. It's stupid, but I'm gonna do it, okay?
Aside from needing to rebuild the carburetor that's sitting under here, the water, I'm sorry, not the water pump, the fuel pump. This has a mechanical fuel pump. The mechanical fuel pump sits right there underneath the intake manifold. It should only be held in by a couple of bolts, and theoretically speaking it shouldn't be too hard to get out, but I'm gonna go ahead and I got to remove that, replace the gaskets, replace the pump itself because it's 48 years old and not working that great, and it's leaking, so we're going to replace that to avoid any fire hazards, and then we should be up and running. So got a little bit of work to do before we are there. Let's get to it. I've got the fuel lines clamped off going to the fuel pump, so now it should just be a matter of unbolting these two bolts that go in through the fuel pump to the block, and we'll see. Let's see, this one seems like it's gonna come out okay. The tough one is the blind one. There's one back behind here that I can't see. I have to do it by feel, and there's all sorts of stuff in the way, so I can't really get my hand back in there very easily. I might be able to go in from underneath, but I think it's really just a matter of fishing it until it locks on from back here and going for it. And I think I've got the blind one off, so that's good. Maybe now that it's loosened, I can just take the ratchet off and spin the bolt out by hand with those finger deals. Some sort of spacer, and there's two gaskets, one against the block and then one here. So I've got the replacement gaskets. This is the old mechanical fuel pump, which it was leaking from right around this seam here. So there's an internal failure inside the unit. And here's the new updated one. And just kind of check in eyeball for measurements. Looks like they match up. At least these important parts here that do the work. This kind of looks like it's made out of pot metal instead of this is stamped steel, so hopefully it holds together, but since the car's not driven very much, it should be alright. When you put this all back together, the gaskets go in a particular orientation. So there's a gasket with a larger head section that covers this opening here. Then your spacer goes on, and then this last gasket. So that's how it needs to work. Of course, the easier way to do this is to make sure you reinstall the hoses first before you try plugging this back in, so I'm going to do that. So none of this is going on at the moment, but just wanted to show you how this is supposed to go back in assembly. Okay, got all the gaskets in place, and now it's going to be the challenge of getting this back to its home without dropping the gaskets or the bolts. So going from underneath didn't really help because I couldn't get leverage on the fuel pump to line it up with the block. So going from the top seems to be the way to go. And I just used the little thumb creeper to get the bolts started. Now that they're started, I'll use a regular ratchet to finish them. This last bolt, it's a blind bolt, can't see it. I might be able to get this one from underneath. I'll give that a whirl. Okay, so theoretically, this is mischief managed and we should be ready to fire her up. So I'm gonna give it a whirl. This is it's the original 48-year-old carburetor and it needs to be rebuilt, but I haven't rebuilt it yet. So starter fluid and manual choke. Sacrifice a chicken, pray to the rain gods, whatever, and it'll get started. So let's give this a whirl and check for leaks. The old starter fluid, and this is going to take a few tries. Back and forth. The mechanical fuel pump has to start pulling all the fuel through from the back side till the vacuum catches it. So it's, yeah, process. So I just remembered, I've got this on a slight incline because I've got it on ramps up on the front. Just wondering if the pickup pipe in the fuel tank might not be picking up. It's only about quarter tank of gas in it right now. So I'm going to try just putting it down on level ground and see if that makes a difference. Who knows? This is what I've run into with the fuel pump. Going through the factory repair manual, it just says remove it, replace it, not a big deal. When I checked online, Auto Recombi has a little video that says the engine has to be at a certain index, and you have to check the secondary shaft to make sure that it's lined up at a certain clock position. and then you can insert the fuel pump, and so it sits on the lobe correctly and will actually actuate. So I've been trying this. I've done it 4 or 5 times now, where I've removed it, I've made sure that the timing mark was lined up correctly, inserted it. You can kind of feel it where it's indexing, but then it's just so hard to get to the bolts to tighten it that I think it's slipping off of the index while I'm tightening the bolts, and I'm not able to hold it in place to get it there. So as much as I don't want to, I think I may have to take off the whole intake manifold to get to the fuel pump without all this stuff in the way, because we got the carburetor, the intake manifold, and then the fuel pump is underneath that. And while I do need to replace the carburetor, I hadn't planned to do it today because it works. It doesn't work great, but it works. And I would have liked to have driven this in the parade tomorrow, but I don't think it's going to happen at this point. So I'm going to give it 1 or 2 more tries to index the fuel pump. And if I can't get it, I can't get it. I'm just going to call for help. So no shame in admitting when you are out of your experience league. And I have not done this before, so totally inexperienced with a manual fuel pump and indexing it. I'm kind of tempted to just make a block-off plate, bypass the manual fuel pump, put an electric fuel pump in this thing, and call it a day. But I would like it to work as it is intended to. So there's got to be a way to make this work. People know how to do it. I'm going to go search the internets and see what I can determine, what we can figure out on this.
2 hours later.
Further update, and this is going to be the last update on this project for the day. So, it wasn't just me. I went on the forums, and I went pulling the threads having to do with mechanical fuel pumps on the Fiat, and I found that 2 things are going on. One, the early fuel pumps are supposedly interchangeable with the later fuel pumps, and the company that I bought this one from sold me a later fuel pump as a direct replacement for an early one. Now, if you have the block out of the out of the car, and you can use 2 hands, you can easily index it and line it all up and get it to work, but it is a very fiddly process because the rocker arm on the new pump, it has to be fitting just so on the cam or it won't work. And the older fuel pumps just tend to bolt right in and work. So I have the wrong pump in order to be doing this repair in the driveway. So I got to pull this pump out again, source the correct pump for the early motors, and then get that in. So at the end of the day, unfortunately, that means this car is not going to work for the parade tomorrow. But we learned a little bit. We did successfully accomplish getting the drive shaft in the car. And since it's going to be down for a little bit, I am going to go ahead and remove the carburetor. I'm going to buy a new carburetor. I found a guy that can rebuild it, but he'll rebuild it for $400, maybe $500. And it turns out there's an aftermarket, well, not an aftermarket, another Fiat carburetor that is a performance carburetor that's a direct bolt-in that's $300, and it'll work great right out of the box. And it's not 48 years old with worn parts, so I'm going to go with that one. So I'm going to go get that new carburetor. We will swap that in. We'll do a few other little tidying up things in here, and then we will do the fuel pump. I'll probably go ahead and remove the intake manifold, replace those gaskets, and just do a lot of freshening up in here. And hopefully we'll be up and running again this summer. Just call it this summer, because I do have other projects to get to, like the Corrado, which is eagerly awaiting its supercharger, and I'm still dealing with the Jetta, trying to get it to pass smog. There's all sorts of projects that are going to keep me busy. So anyway, have to admit defeat for now. That's how it goes sometimes, and you know it well. If you're doing your own work in your garage or on your driveway, sometimes it just doesn't work out, and you got to come back to it another day. So sadly, that is what we're doing today. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you found it at least a little bit entertaining. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. It helps me out a lot. And, you know, it might encourage some of your other grease monkey friends, too, if you share it to them. Hey, this guy just spent hours and hours working on his car, and it's still not working. You're not alone. See you soon. Bye-bye. You can shoot me a direct message. You can find me on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook. You know, you can hunt down my email off of my church website. I am a pastor at Quest Church San Diego. That's questsd.com, and you can find me there. So anyway, we'll see you again soon. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope that you had fun watching this video. See you soon. Bye-bye.